Welcome back to Learn and Love Music. We're continuing our series on the piano works of Franz Schubert. This is our third installment. Today we're going to look at the final sonata of Schubert, the B-flat major, the piece that's called the Sonata with Heavenly Length. And we're also going to look at some of the transitions and the key changes. So let's get started with Dr. Geoffrey Block. Getting back to the point of what we're talking about, Schubert is a lyrical composer. I have chosen three pieces that are just marvelous in terms of lyricism. The G-flat impromptu, the A major little sonata, as opposed to the big sonata, the later one. We'll do a little bit of that, and also the grand B-flat sonata, which is the final piano sonata that he wrote. And what did they say about it? They called it was Heavenly Length. How long? Tell us a little bit about the B-flat sonata.
Well, it is long. It's about 40 minutes. The term heavenly length was originally used or applied to the Great C Major Symphony in an essay that Schumann wrote about it, and Schumann was the one who arranged for the first performance of that symphony, conducted by his good buddy Mendelssohn. And he meant that was a great thing, heavenly length. But later on what happened is because Schubert's piano works were actually, I think all the major ones are longer than Beethoven sonatas, maybe with a couple of exceptions, that they seem too long because people weren't used to a longer kind of a work, particularly a work that emphasizes melody. So you'd think that wouldn't be too much of a good thing, but it seemed to be too much of a good thing for a lot of audiences. So the heavenly length refers to just the fact that his sonatas are long, and the B-flat is long. If you take the first repeat, it's what, 45 minutes or something? And only one Beethoven sonata is that long. So it took time to get used to it.
What I'd like to do is to go to the piano and demonstrate some of the different keys and choices that Schubert has made, especially in transitions. One of the things about composition, and maybe Geoffrey can talk about this, is that the sonata form was something that most composers, including Beethoven and Mozart, they would write a piece in a particular key, let's say in D major, and then the repetition of the theme might be in the dominant in A major, and then we might go off into a development section and come back to the key. Schubert was different. Schubert chose his own keys, and sometimes they were very, well, what is the word, weird. Maybe you could talk to us a little bit, Geoffrey, about Schubert's choice of keys when he goes through the different repetitions or variations of a particular sonata.
Right. Well, Schubert was extraordinarily innovative in his choice of keys and how he used them. And one of our best examples today is when you play the B-flat sonata, because he starts off in one key, which is B-flat, and then he returns to a variation of the original melody, but he separates the original tune in B-flat with a rumbling low bass trill. So even though the piece is really lyrical, that trill makes us wonder what is going on in this piece. And then what Schubert does is he moves without any warning to another key, a remote key of G-flat major. Now, the note B-flat's a little bit technical, but the note B-flat, which is the key of the piece, is in the same chord as G-flat. And starting with Schubert, what composers realized, is that if you have one note in common, you can move anywhere without warning. What Beethoven will do is he might go to an unusual key, but he will prepare that unusual key with another chord called the dominant that prepares for the new key. And that's really technical, harmony's technical. But what Schubert will do is right after that trill, it'll sound like a sudden new key. And then what he does just as suddenly is he comes right back again to B-flat. So it functions like in a grammatical sentence, like a parenthesis. If you took the material out of, it's just for its own beauty. If you took the material out of a parenthesis and just went from one thing to another, you'd still have your sentence. Likewise, in Schubert's sonata, if you didn't have that beautiful G-flat section, you'd have something a lot less beautiful, but it would still work as a sonata. So that's one example of many. He goes to remote keys, he reharmonizes melodies in unusual ways. He's just full of harmonic surprises and innovations that go beyond what Beethoven was doing, but at the same token anticipate what the next 2 or 3 generations of Romantic composers would be doing in the 19th century.
Not to mention C-sharp minor, which has nothing to do with B-flat or G-flat.
Exactly.
I mean, those 3 keys are so far apart.
Right.
So we'll be looking at some of these interesting junctures in the Schubert B-flat sonata.
Absolutely.
It's all very shocking. Before I play this excerpt from the B-flat major sonata of Schubert, I'd like to point out some of the things that Dr. Block mentioned in his talk. He talked about the low rumbling bass. We start out with a beautiful melody, and when we get to the end of the melody, there's a low rumbling bass, rather ominous. But then what he does is, the second time he goes through that, he does the low rumbling bass again, and he does a low rumbling bass, and surprise, new key, G-flat major, very distant from B-flat major. That's very unusual for music written at this time. And there's another transition we're going to look at the end of the exposition, the first part. The exposition ends with some chords. So nice B-flat major, nice F major chord, then he does this, surprise. Very distant key, C-sharp minor. Then he begins the same theme we heard in the beginning, but in C-sharp minor. We have a dark version of that theme. A little decoration. So lots of different changes, transitions, very specific to Schubert and the way he looked at structure. So let's hear the B-flat sonata, first movement. We want to thank Dr. Geoffrey Block for joining us today to talk about Schubert. And make sure you check out his book if you're interested in that. It is available on Amazon. Any new projects coming up, Geoffrey?
Oh yes, I have a lot of new projects, mostly in musical theater and film.
So make sure you look up Geoffrey Block. There may be something new coming out soon. So thank you very much for joining us on Learn and Love Music, and we'll see you back next time.